What if you could literally buy back 3 years of your life for the price of a bottle of vitamins?
Right.
We're not talking about snake oil or some fleeting trend. The validated data is suggesting this is a completely tangible return on investment in your physical longevity.
Yeah.
We are diving deep today into what we're calling the biological time machine.
And it sounds like hyperbole, I get it, but when you actually look at the scale of the source material we have, the claim becomes, well, pretty compelling.
Right.
We are focused on vitamin D3, and let's be clear, don't get it twisted, we should be calling it a pro-hormone. And a recent, absolutely massive 4-year study that has flown completely under the radar.
Which is just astonishing to me because the finding impacts the core mechanism of how we age. So our mission today is simple. We're going to dissect this data. We're going to extract the critical, actionable strategy.
Right.
How do we use this universally available molecule for optimal longevity and health preservation?
And that strategy part is key. I mean, that's what separates the informed from the merely compliant. If the potential gain is this high, the implementation has to be precise.
Hold up. Before we get into the weeds, we have to shout out Sharad M.
We have to.
He's the licensed consultant pharmacist and lab diagnostic expert who pulled all this data together. This guy has seen thousands of panels, and he's the one who vetted this 25,000 person study to make sure we aren't just looking at noise, but actual signal.
And that's the key word right there, signal. He confirms this is validated, scientifically proven, and safe. That rigor gives us the foundation to even talk about such an extraordinary claim.
Exactly. Signal that is impossible to ignore. So let's get into it. Let's unpack the core data.
Okay, so this was a massive 4-year undertaking. It was conducted across the United States, involved 25,000 adults, and was driven by 140 researchers.
Wow. Okay, so this is not a small cohort.
No, this is a landmark investigation.
So what did this monumental study, peering into the biological future of 25,000 people, what did it actually find? What's the headline?
The key finding was startlingly simple and incredibly high impact. Participants who consistently took vitamin D3 for 4 years, they preserved their telomere length by roughly 3 years.
3 years. Let's just pause on that.
Yeah.
That means in the 4 years they were taking the supplement, their biological aging marker, the integrity of their DNA, it only aged 1 year. Think about that ROI. You take a relatively inexpensive, safe molecule for 4 years, and you effectively de-age by 3 years. I mean, this is a total no-brainer investment.
And if you compare it to other longevity protocols, the expensive peptides, complex NAD protocols, this is the low-cost, high-impact foundational step that produced a real quantified gain.
And the study gave us a great point of comparison.
It did. It offers a fantastic contrast. They compared D3 to omega-3 supplements. And look, while omega-3s are champions for cardiovascular health, they did not show this crucial telomere preservation effect.
So D3, in this context, it stands alone.
It absolutely does.
That distinction is everything because it tells us exactly where to allocate our focus for this specific goal. But if we don't understand how it works, we can't optimize it. So let's look under the hood.
Okay, so first we have to correct the language. We called it a vitamin, but really structurally and functionally, D3 is a pro-hormone.
Okay, so what's the functional difference there for the listener? Why is that so important?
Well, a traditional vitamin is often a cofactor, right? A necessary building block the body can't produce. D3 is different. Once it's metabolized, it becomes calcitriol, an active steroid hormone.
Hormone.
It doesn't just fill a nutritional gap. It actively regulates and signals genetic expression across thousands of genes. It's a master switch.
That makes perfect sense. It's not just fuel. It's a sophisticated operating system update. And that brings us to the core mechanism here, protecting your chromosomal end caps.
Yes, protecting the telomeres. We always use the thymus analogy because it illustrates the stakes so perfectly. Telomeres are like the plastic tips on a shoelace. Precisely. The aglets. Every time your cell divides, those protective aglets get a tiny bit shorter.
And once they're gone?
Once they're gone, your actual core DNA starts to fray. It can stick together improperly. And this triggers something called cellular senescence.
For listeners who haven't encountered that term, what does that mean in plain language? Why do we want to avoid that?
Senescent cells are often called zombie cells. They stop dividing, but they don't die. They just hang around, secreting these inflammatory signals that damage all the healthy tissue around them.
So that's the inflammaging we hear about.
That is the root of inflammaging. It's a key driver of pretty much every age-related disease. So D3's function here, preserving that telomere length, is a total game changer. It pushes back against the root cause of decay.
So if D3 can preserve them this well, does that mean researchers are now chasing a molecule that can actually reverse the damage? Or is preservation the ceiling for now?
And that distinction is the absolute key to strategy. Currently, preservation is the most effective, proven strategy. The data showed D3 preserved telomere length.
It slowed the clock.
It slowed the clock. To the knowledge of our source, Sherrod, and based on current science, there is simply no validated way to reliably extend telomeres once they have shortened. The length you have right now is the most you will ever have.
And preserving it is the primary
It
strategy.
seems the only strategy we know that works.
And that's so powerful, it just reinforces the validity when you hear the expert who compiled this, Sherrod, mentioned his own experience. He'd been on a D3 routine for 3.5 years and felt like he was, quote, frozen in this aging time. It's incredibly satisfying when a massive 25,000 person study validates the positive effects you've been tracking anecdotally.
It shifts the conversation from, optimism to certainty. But this preservation finding, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. And this is where it gets really interesting because it connects to broader data sets we already had about the brain.
Okay, bring on the cognitive insurance policy.
That's right. When you preserve cellular integrity, you preserve organ integrity. So we connect this new finding to an older but equally convincing data set, specifically a Canadian study from a couple of years ago.
This one was long, right?
Yeah, a 10-year period, about 12,000 participants.
And the finding there was, it was a massive needle mover for brain health.
It was. That 10-year study showed that consistent vitamin D supplementation could reduce the risk of developing dementia by about 40%.
40%.
40%. That risk reduction is enormous.
That's a massive needle mover for brain health, especially with the rates of cognitive decline we're seeing. So when you combine the physical longevity, the telomere part, with the reduced risk of neurodegeneration, you have exactly what we called it, a cognitive insurance policy.
And what does it say about the strength of that study that the expert's own family, his wife and his mother, immediately adopted the routine?
That's real conviction.
It is.
Yeah.
When the data is that compelling, it creates real-world urgency.
If the validated data is screaming at you that a simple, safe molecule reduces your risk of the most feared cognitive decline by nearly half and keeps your DNA intact, you have to pay attention. But here's the ultimate hack. Taking D3 alone is amateur hour.
It really is. It's the difference between driving a Ferrari with underinflated tires and actually tuning the engine for peak performance. You have to optimize the whole system.
So for the listener who wants to implement this, what is the mandatory longevity stack?
You need D3, K2, and magnesium. The synergy is, it's non-negotiable, and here's why.
Yeah.
D3 increases the absorption of calcium from your gut. Great for your bones. But that whole process requires magnesium as a cofactor to convert D3 into its active hormonal form.
So they need each other.
They're interdependent. D3 helps you absorb magnesium, and magnesium helps D3 work. It's a critical feedback loop. If you're deficient in magnesium, and a lot of people are, you undermine the whole thing.
Okay, but let's talk K2, because that's the critical safety valve that prevents disaster.
Absolutely. K2 is healthy for your arteries because it's the agent that prevents calcification. If you take high doses of D3, which increases circulating calcium without K2, there's a risk that calcium could deposit in your arteries.
Not good.
Very not good. K2 acts as a molecular traffic cop. It activates a protein that actively pulls calcium out of those soft tissues.
It's directing the calcium flow.
Exactly. K2 ensures that calcium goes where it belongs, to the bones and teeth, preventing the hardening of your blood vessels. It's about engineering a biologically safe and efficient system.
And speaking of engineering, we have to talk about strategic timing. The window is closing, especially for our listeners who are, say, under the age of 45.
This goes right back to that preservation versus reversal distinction.
Right.
Since the goal is preservation, you want to start when you have the longest possible telomeres to protect. If you wait until significant shortening has already happened, you are leaving gains on the table.
What does leaving gains on the table actually mean for someone who's 50 versus someone who's 40? Why is the source so insistent on this under 45 rule?
Because the shortening process isn't linear. After age 40, we start to see a more significant accelerated shortening of telomeres. It's from increased oxidative stress, cellular turnover.
It speeds up.
It speeds up. So if you jump in at, say, 38, you're preserving a much longer, healthier baseline length for the next 40 years. If you wait until 50, you're only preserving the shorter length you have left.
So the return on investment just plummets the longer you delay.
Drastically.
So the message is clear. Stop playing games with your biology. If you're in your late 30s or early 40s, this is the time to implement this stack and maximize your return on biological investment.
It's a powerful wake-up call, and it speaks to a fundamental human tendency, right? Taking health for granted.
Yeah.
Once people feel better or they're asymptomatic, that initial urgency just fades.
Right, you get complacent.
Totally. But the data keeps piling up, constantly reinforcing the necessity of foundational steps like this one. You can't just rely on feeling good.
So let's synthesize this massive deep dive. We have a huge 4-year study confirming that D3 preserved telomere length by 3 years. You age only 1 year and 4. We've defined the critical synergy with K2 and magnesium, and we've connected this all to previous studies showing a 40% reduction in dementia risk.
This isn't just a supplement, it's a fundamental upgrade to your human machinery. And it's accessible. Remember, the D3 in the study is the exact same one our bodies make from sun exposure.
Which most of us are not getting enough of.
Exactly. If you're not in the sun year-round or optimizing your diet, supplementation is pretty much non-negotiable for biological maintenance.
The data is screaming at us. It's showing us exactly where to put our focus for genuine, lifelong longevity gains. But the danger of successful optimization is that you forget why you started.
Which leads to our final question for you, the listener, today. We know the strategy works, and we know the time window for maximum gains is closing.
What proven, scientifically backed step in your biological optimization routine are you taking for granted right now? The time to preserve the best version of yourself is now, before the window shuts.